Welcome to In Brief series with Sir Francis Bacon. We start with his method of philosophy. Bacon is known as a philosopher, one of the first order. Bacon delineated the principles of the inductive method, which constituted a breakthrough in the approach to science. Bacon argued that the only knowledge of importance to man was empirically rooted in the natural world, and that a clear system of scientific inquiry would assure man's mastery over the world. He was the originator of the expression, knowledge is power. He was quite taken up by the materialist theories and the resultant discoveries of both Copernicus and Galileo. Bacon, along with Galileo, are known in the literature as the greatest anti Aristotelians who created the modern scientific view of nature. Bacon's method was empirical. How? Bacon argued that the only knowledge of importance to man was empirically rooted in the natural world. I quote, "There are and can be only two ways of searching into and discovering truth. The one flies from the senses and particulars to the most general axioms. This way is now in fashion. The other drives axioms from the senses and particulars, rising by a gradual and unbroken ascent, so that it arrives at the most general axioms last of all. This is the true way, but as yet untried." A brief idea about truth of civil business. It's clear and round. Clear and round dealing is the honor of man's nature, and that mixture of falsehoods is like the alloying coin of gold and silver, which may make the metal work the better, but it impasseth it. For these winding and crooked courses are the goings of the serpent, which goes basely upon the belly, and not upon the feet. There is no vice that doth so cover man with shame as to be found false and perfidious. Bacon's main idea in Of Death. It is as natural to die as to be born, and to a little infant, perhaps, the one is as painful as the other. He that dies in an earnest pursuit is like one that is wounded in hot blood, who, for the time, scarce feels the hurt, and therefore, a mind fixed and bent upon somewhat that is good, doth avert the dolours of death. But above all, believe it, the sweetest canticle is when a man hath obtained worthy ends and expectations. Death hath this also, that it openeth the gate to good fame and extinguisheth envy. What does Bacon mean by religion? When atheists and profane persons do hear of so many discordant and contrary opinions in religion, it doth avert them from the church, and make them to sit down in the chair of the scorners. He that is not against us is with us. That is, if the points fundamental and of substance in religion were truly discerned and distinguished from points not merely of faith, but of opinion, order, or good intention. This is a thing may seem to many a matter trivial and done already, but if it were done less partially, it would be embraced more generally. Men create oppositions which are not, and put them into new terms so fixed as whereas the meaning ought to govern the term in effect governeth the meaning. There be also two false species or unities. The one when the piece is grounded, but upon an implicit ignorance, for all colors will agree in the dark. The other when it is pieced upon a direct admission of contraries in fundamental points. For truth and falsehood in such things are like the iron and clay in the toes of Nebuchadnezzar's image. They may cleave, but they will not incorporate. The main idea of revenge. Certainly, in taking revenge, a man is but even with his enemy, but in passing it over, he is superior, for it is a prince's part to pardon. And Solomon, I'm sure, saith, it is the glory of a man to pass by an offense. That which is past is gone and irrevocable, and wise men have enough to do with things present and to come. Therefore, they do but trifle with themselves that labor in past matters. Comparison between prosperity and adversity. The virtue of prosperity is temperance. The virtue of adversity is fortitude, which in morals is the more heroical virtue. Prosperity is the blessing of the Old Testament. Adversity is the blessing of the New, which carrieth the greater benediction and the clearer revelation of God's favor. Prosperity is not without many fears and distastes, and adversity is not without comforts and hopes. We see in needleworks and embroideries, it is more pleasing to have a lively work upon a sad and solemn ground than to have a dark and melancholy work upon a lightsome ground. Judge therefore of the pleasure of the heart by the pleasure of the eye. Surely virtue is like precious odors, most fragrant when they are incensed or crushed. For prosperity doth best discover vice, but adversity doth best discover virtue. The 3 degrees of hiding and veiling man's self. There be 3 degrees of this hiding and veiling of a man's self. The first, closeness, reservation, and secrecy, when a man leaveth himself without observation or without hold to be taken, what he is. The second, dissimulation. In the negative, when a man lets fall signs and arguments that he is not that he is. And the third, simulation. In the affirmative, when a man industriously and expressly feigns and pretends to be that he is not. For the first of these, secrecy, it is indeed the virtue of a confessor. And assuredly the secret man heareth many confessions. For who will open himself to a plab or a papilla? But if a man be thought secret, it inviteth discovery, as the more close air sucketh in the more open. And as in confession, the revealing is not for worldly use, but for the ease of a man's heart. So secret men come to the knowledge of many things in that kind, while men rather discharge their minds than impart their minds. In few words, mysteries are due to secrecy. For the second, which is dissimulation, it falleth many times upon secrecy by a necessity, so that he that will be secret must be a dissembler in some degree, so that no man can be secret except he give himself a little scope of dissimulation, which is, as it were, but the skirts or train of secrecy. But for the 3rd degree, which is simulation and false profession, that I hold more culpable and less politic, except it being great and rare matters. And therefore a general custom of simulation, which is this last degree, is a vice, rising either of a natural falseness or fearfulness, or of a mind that hath some main faults, which because a man must needs disguise, it makes him practice simulation in other things, lest his hand should be out of use. What are the advantages and disadvantages of simulation and dissimulation? The great advantages of simulation and dissimulation are 3. First, to lay asleep opposition and to surprise. For where a man's intentions are published, it is an alarm to call up all that are against them. The second is to reserve to a man's self a fair treatment. For if a man engage himself by a manifest declaration, he must go through or take a fall. The third is the better to discover the mind of another, for to him that opens himself, men will hardly show themselves adverse, but will fair let him go on, and turn their freedom of speech to freedom of thought. And therefore it is a good shrewd proverb of the Spaniard, tell a lie and find a truth, as if there were no way of discovery but by simulation. There be also three disadvantages to set it even. The first, that simulation and dissimulation commonly carry with them a show of fearfulness, which in any business doth spoil the features of round flying up to the mark. The second, that it puzzleth and perplexeth the conceits of many, that perhaps would otherwise cooperate with him, and makes a man walk almost alone to his own ends. The third and greatest is that it deprives a man of one of the most principal instruments for action, which is trust and belief.